You're listening to Squatch Talks Podcast. Real stories and real encounters told by real researchers. Sit back, relax, and enjoy the show.
Hey, Squatchers. Eric and Heather Spinner here at the Bucks County Paranormal Convention. It's the second annual. And we're about to go peruse the vendors, and we're going to attend some of the speakers today. I'm not on the roster, so it gives me the opportunity to just chill. Oh, look who's coming now. Look who it is now. It's Eric Mintel.
Eric Spinner.
Hey,
What's
Eric.
up, guys?
Well, we're going to have a great day, aren't we?
Oh, absolutely. Heather,
Awesome.
This is Heather, who actually, she did the whoop, and you see in our Bigfoot video.
In the Bigfoot video.
And it whooped back at her, not once, but like 5 or 6 times, so it was a really amazing.
They were having a conversation.
Oh, I'm sorry. I'm sorry. Wait, speaking of Jack, I mean, hee-haw.
Yes, that's what we're in for today. This is what we're in for today.
And to be honest with you, I go into a lot of these investigations a little on the skeptical side, because I really want to know what is going on there. So we're all about truth-based investigating. You'll notice that we don't use a lot of like spirit boxes. We don't use that at all, or REM pods or anything like that. Nothing wrong with that, but we just, to me, they give you a false reading when you're trying to get some real activity, real research.
And we've proven that because we have an EMF detector. It senses electromagnetic fields, and if you get your cell phone too close to it, it'll set it off. So we make sure that a lot of times our cell phones aren't on us, because we want to show truth-based again.
Right.
And we want to make sure that you're getting true readings. And the last video we just did, which hasn't been released yet, we actually were using the EMF, and there was a spirit that was right there. You could see the orb, and when the orb came right up next to the EMF, it spiked. So it was pretty cool.
That's our latest video. We were doing a lot of like crazy haunted libraries of all places.
Yes.
So this is a library we did, the Northampton Library. So we're going to be releasing that pretty soon. But let's get to this little presentation, because wait till you see what we got. That's me. That's usually my stance.
When he's running away. And I said, no, I'm done. I won't go back, not into that room.
Women react the same way to him. So no, but listen guys, thank you so much. We've got a lot more, but go check out our videos. And we'll be around. We're going to be around. Thank you so much. We're going to be around for a little bit. I've got some books for sale, and come out and see us. But we got a real great special guest. We've got Bill Birnes right here.
Yes.
Right here from UFO Hunters. Let's give Bill a round.
Start with this. After the crash at Roswell, President Truman put together, along with James Forrestal, who was first Secretary of the Navy, then Secretary of Defense, we're talking 1948. They put together a team that would actually study what the debris from the Roswell crash meant, what the ETs, one of whom was still alive, he went to Area 51, what that technology was, who were these creatures, why were they here, and since this was President Truman's, he was termed out. He was a lame duck president in 1948, 49. Because of that, they formed a committee with all these super researchers from World War II. In fact, one of the people on that committee, because you're all going to be sitting on your iPhones now, one of the people on that committee, his name was Vannevar Bush, no relation to President Bush. Vannevar Bush. Vannevar Bush invented, in an essay called How We Think, the whole concept of hypertext. Hypertext, HTML, you guys live on that. So that came out of 1948. But the big thing was, they formed a group, and the group was called MJ12. And in that group was first Secretary of the Navy, then Secretary of Defense, James Forrestal. MJ12 was a study group, but it also was a cover-up group. The last thing anybody in the military and in the presidential administration wanted was to say that our skies were vulnerable to creatures who could avoid our weapons, who could break into our security. They were panic-stricken. The name of that group was Magic 12 or MJ12. In that group, as I said, led by James Forrestal, do you know who was an assistant to James Forrestal? Jack Kennedy. So from the moment after that crash in Roswell, when they formed that study group and cover-up group, Jack Kennedy was involved in that. So you want to talk about all the things about Jack Kennedy, he was one of the, along with Harry Truman, one of the first UFO presidents. So was President Eisenhower. Who else was in that group? In that group was also a bunch of national security people and scientists, one of whom was Dr. Menzel. Professor Menzel was a professor of astrophysics at Harvard. He was like the killer. If you poked up your head and talked about UFOs, Menzel would beat the crap out of you. And what did he do? Some of you might remember a book all the way back in the 1950s about Planet X, the dark planet, the planet beyond Pluto that was causing effects on the outer realms of the solar system. But worse, here's what this guy said. That Planet X orbits close to Earth every 1,000 or so years. When that happens, all kinds of anomalies turn up on this planet, including people from Planet X who come to this planet. That was the book. One of the biggest bestsellers of the 1950s. And the guy who wrote it, Emanuel Velikovsky, was a psychiatrist. I mean, he was an MD. Menzel, and he worked at Harvard, along with Menzel. Menzel so went after him for that book that Harvard fired him. Other people in that group, very important group. President Kennedy takes office in 1961. On a lonely road, get this, on a lonely road in New Hampshire, near these ski resorts, an interracial couple who had been on vacation in Canada are driving along. This is Betty and Barney Hill, and Barney looks up, he's driving along. Barney sees a light over the car. He says to Betty, "Is that the moon?" Betty says, "It's too big for the moon." They drive along some roads. Again, they're heading home from Canada back to New Hampshire, and this thing is following them. So Betty says, "What the hell is that? It's up in the sky and it's following us." So Barney decides to stop the car to get a better look at this place called Franconia Notch. Gets out of the car, the light descends toward the car. Then what happens? Betty and Barney Hill say, "We're getting the hell out of here." So they pile into the car, the light follows them, stops them in the center of the road. Betty and Barney try and run away. Small creatures, looking like children, run out, grab Betty, grab Barney, take them aboard a spaceship where they perform medical experiments on them. Now, this never made the news at first. But Barney, I'm going to start pacing a little bit here. Barney, who was hypertension, poor Barney starts having all kinds of nightmares, bad dreams. I mean, his blood pressure goes up. Betty takes him to a doctor. The doctor says, "There's nothing wrong with you. Why are you here?" He says, "I'm having these nightmares. My God, I'm seeing myself being taken away by small creatures." He says, "What you need to do is talk to a psychiatrist." Goes to a psychiatrist. Barney tells the story, why he's the way he is, why he's having all these visions, these nightmares. Betty says the same thing. The psychiatrist says there's only one person who can help you. Only one. And that's the doctor. He was played by Gregory Peck in the movies. That's the doctor who first discovered how to treat shell shock, battle fatigue, PTSD. And that man was Benjamin Simon. Benjamin Simon takes the hills, does hypnotic regression on both of them. Here's the story. He's got a tape recorder running. He takes what they tell him about being picked up on the road. Betty is grabbed by these little creatures. Barney is grabbed by these little creatures. They go up into this craft. In the craft, they're looking for egg cells in Betty's womb. They're looking for sperm cells in Barney, you know where. So they have this experience. Now it's all on tape. The transcriber making, right, this is before the days of the Macintosh, text to speech, speech to text, she has to type it out by hand. She is blown away by the story. You mean a flying saucer kidnaps this couple? They take them, they do medical experiments? What's going on here? She's so impressed by this that she takes it to this person called Luttrell from the Boston Traveler magazine. He's a reporter. He says, "Are you crazy? Are you kidding me?" He publishes it in the Boston newspapers. Suddenly, President Kennedy, in 1961, who was part of the original UFO cover-up and research, is hit smack in the face on the cover of Look magazine with Betty and Barney Hill saying, "We were abducted by a UFO." Well, you can imagine how that rocked that administration. But wait, there's more. The next thing Kennedy finds out is that in his own Pentagon, in his own Army R&D, there is a lieutenant colonel that's taking the debris from the Roswell crash and slumping it into industry for reverse engineering. Lasers, Kevlar, integrated circuits. That's why in the mid-60s, America experienced one of the greatest golden ages of technology. Mini computers, microcomputers, all kinds of new circuits. And when the two people at Bell Labs, Bratton, he saw, for the first time, he saw the integrated circuit. Bell Labs was trying to build a circuit that would only pass one electron through in one direction at a time. Couldn't do it. They were trying to replace the Edison tube, right? Incandescent lights, or the Edison tubes. So what do? The Army gives them this piece of this UFO. That was the first integrated circuit, and that began the golden age. So here's President Kennedy. He was part of MJ-12, the cover-up group on UFOs. Now he's got his own Army colonel in the Pentagon reverse engineering technology from the very craft he was supposed to cover up. But wait, it gets much, much worse. Jack Kennedy is also being treated by this very strange doctor called Max Jacobson. Who was Max Jacobson? Max Jacobson, in the 1920s, was trying to find a way to stop septic surgeries from causing the Spanish flu. That was the biggest thing. We had COVID 100 years ago. They had the Spanish flu, and same thing happened. When the Spanish flu broke out, you had Woodrow Wilson, president, saying, "Oh, it's nothing. It'll go away. It's nothing." You've heard that before, right? Mm-hmm. With COVID. So Jack Kennedy now knows that in his army, he's got somebody working on the UFO technology, right? And he hears about Betty and Barney Hill, and he has his own experience. But what happened with Max Jacobson, Dr. Feelgood, what was his nickname, is that he was giving Jack Kennedy straight up injectable 40 milligrams of pure methamphetamine. Because it was Max Jacobson who perfected methamphetamine for the German soldiers. That's what Hitler took in his bunker. That was Bavarian. So now Kennedy is on methamphetamine. Then, and he is totally whacked out on methamphetamine. So the idea that there were UFOs in his administration is driving him wild. So, how does he, then he knows that at Area 51, which was opened in the 1950s, there are live aliens. We captured a UFO, it's at Area 51, and they're trying to reverse engineer it. Kennedy, because of one thing methamphetamine does, okay? Methamphetamine makes you bipolar. So you get crazy in your brain. You want more. Then, when the methamphetamine wears off, you get phenomenally depressed. Because methamphetamine stimulates the flow of dopamine, the reward chemical in the brain. So here's Kennedy. He's wild. Who does he turn to just to unload what's going on? Marilyn Monroe. Marilyn Monroe fell in love with Kennedy. And Kennedy, who was a womanizer, I mean, there were movie stars. I got to tell you, there's a, out there, I don't know if I brought him in, and they're in the car if I didn't, but there is a book out there called the Dr. Feelgood Case Book. And in it are all the stories from the newspaper about this guy, Dr. Feelgood. In it is a testimony from Eddie Fisher, who we interviewed. Eddie Fisher was one of the biggest singers of the 1950s, along with Frank Sinatra. Mm-hmm. Best friends with Jack Kennedy. You know what Jack Kennedy asked what Eddie Fisher to do? You know what he asked him? Bring me girls. I want women in the White House. And that was Eddie Fisher's job, bringing women to the Kennedy White House for trysts. That wasn't enough for Kennedy. He was going crazy. By 1962-63, he was out of his mind. And remember, this was a president. I mean, let's reorient history here. The first three things that Kennedy did: the Bay of Pigs invasion, remember that? Total failure. He also, at the Vienna conference with Khrushchev, total failure. Because Khrushchev said to him, I'm going to build a wall in Berlin. If you try and enter Berlin, there's going to be war. Kennedy says he treated me like a child when he tells Scotty Rest of the New York Times. You know why Khrushchev treated him as a child? Because when Kennedy was waiting in the hotel room for the Russian delegate, for the Soviet delegation, Max Jacobson overdosed him on methamphetamine. So Kennedy meets Khrushchev, he's falling off chairs. Khrushchev burst out laughing. Look at this guy. He's a drunk. That was a disaster for Kennedy. Then, in the end, he tells all this to Marilyn Monroe. Then, because of Joe Kennedy, he breaks up with Marilyn Monroe. Marilyn Monroe, by the way, went to Jackie Kennedy and said to Jackie Kennedy, your husband is going to divorce you, he's going to marry me, and I'm going to be the new First Lady. Marilyn Monroe, and so Jackie Kennedy says to Marilyn Monroe, good luck, you can be the First Lady. So when Kennedy announces to Marilyn Monroe, he announces this about Area 51, then what he does, his last act, 5 minutes, his last act is to tell all the chiefs of staff in his military, all 4 chiefs of staff, I want you to send all your UFO files to Khrushchev and the Soviet Union. Disclose to the Soviet Union. And they say to Kennedy, why? And Kennedy says, I don't want them shooting down our spacecraft thinking they're flying saucers. So Kennedy, in one of the last acts of his life, orders UFO files to the Soviet Union. And then in the very last act, because he wanted to harmonize, he says, we're pulling our advisors out of Vietnam. It's 1963, and Kennedy says, we're removing all our advisors out of Vietnam. No fighting in Vietnam. But guess whom he crossed when he did that? What most folks don't know is that the CIA was laundering money for the Southeast Asian drug traffickers, laundering it through banks in Mexico. When Kennedy said, I'm pulling our advisors out of Vietnam, we're getting out of Vietnam, that was a direct challenge to the CIA's source of income. That marked it. And so it was UFOs, telling the Russians about UFOs, telling Marilyn Monroe about UFOs, the fascination with UFOs from the time he was a young congressman, that all combined in 1963, when the CIA went to Lyndon Johnson, and they said to Lyndon Johnson, Mr. Vice President, you have 2 choices. Because Johnson was going to be indicted because he was so corrupt in the Senate, he was taking money under the table, in his shoes, in his back pocket, anywhere he could. They said, you're going to jail unless you do one thing for us. You, when President Kennedy leaves office, you're going to be the new president, and you close down any investigation into his death. Johnson agreed. Kennedy was assassinated. Johnson became the president. And guess who got into the Vietnam War? So this is how UFOs, and wrap this up here, this is how UFOs so infiltrated the knowledge of UFOs, so infiltrated our government that even today we are wrestling over what to do about UFOs, right? You saw the UFO videos from San Diego, right? That the Navy pilots released. Who do you think gave the permission to release that? It had to go through the chain of command, right? Had to go through the Secretary of the Navy, Secretary of Defense, probably right up to Barack Obama and Joe Biden. So we are wrestling with today. But the series that I'm working on right now is how UFOs so caused Kennedy to go wacko that it wound up with his assassination. Look for this somewhere on Hulu. On Hulu.
Starring Eric Mintel.
Okay, one more thing. Starting this year on Hulu is the story of Ted Bundy's confessions to the detective who caught him. Look for this. It's called Conversations with the Devil. I'm on it, and it's all about Ted Bundy and Bob Keppel. And thank you for your kind indulgence.
Woo!
Thank you, Bill Birnes.
Thanks for squatching.
Thanks for checking out this episode of Squatch Talks Podcast. Don't forget to subscribe, follow, and give us a like, and stay tuned for more exciting stories on Squatch Talks.